It's April 2nd, 2019, and yesterday was April Fool's Day, and there was a lot of technology April Fool's nonsense, which we'll probably cover next week.
Part of the April Fool is that today's April 2nd. And Chris is not here,
She's missing.
which is also an April Fool's joke
No email.
on us. So, we'll soldier on without her. She hates to miss government news because
Actually, this week's news is a lot of fun because it's the first week in a long time where a lot of the news is interrelated. A lot of the whole, like, left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and, you know, left shoe when the shoe's on the other foot. A lot of that.
generally for government news, which is what we're going into, I follow a strict timeline. You start out with federal U.S. news because the U.S. is number one. Then you bleed into state level news. Then you go EU, and then China, Russia. You ended up with Australia if you have to, if something comes out of Australia.
Australia doesn't even count. Australia is like the grand experiment of the capitalists.
Dead last. This week we will change that because of the severity. And it's not surprising, but here it is. It's happened.
The copyright law that threatens the internet as we know it has passed a final EU vote, as we predicted. It was Article 13 and the link tax, although Article 13 is now Article 17. They renamed. So, like, there was an insane amount of shenanigans that went into the lead up to this vote. There were a lot of people that were saying, well, we could probably pass this. It's the right idea for some things, but we need to refine the language here, there, and yonder. And they did actually refine the language to say that best efforts could be used for content filtering, but it still puts into place that content is filtered before it's uploaded instead of the whole takedown request that the EU currently has, which is really similar to what we have in America, the DMCA.
The other problem, and I question that this happened how they thought, but I think what really happened here is somebody got in their ear or in their pocket and said, you'll vote this way and you'll get this. They did vote that way. And then later they went back and they were like, oh, wait, I didn't understand.
MEPs accidentally vote the wrong way on copyright law. This is kind of important because just 5 votes is all that was necessary to actually add some critical amendments to that law in the EU, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen, and these MEPs were like, "Oh, we didn't mean to vote that way," and it is because they changed the order at the last minute, but they didn't read. Like, are people that, like, is it that terrible? It seems like a terrible.
Not people, politicians.
The lowest form of pond scum.
So they went back and they wanted some kind of resolution to say, no, we want it clear in the record that we didn't mean to do this. But once you've cast a vote, there's no takebacks.
Well, there is a thing, but it can't change the outcome. Like, you can be like, oops, I voted the wrong way, and it's cool. It'll record you having voted the other way, but it doesn't change the outcome.
That's what I'm saying. So,
Well, not just a footnote. Just like, yeah, we're going to change it, but it doesn't actually change it.
but what I'm saying is they can, when people call them up furious, they'll be like, no, note the record. I changed it, but it doesn't actually change it.
Yeah,
So that's a stupid rule.
it is a really stupid rule.
And they should do away with it. So this means, hopefully, the best case scenario here is we just cut that undersea cable.
Well, see, there's a more interesting thing happening with this in France, actually. France was like, a lot of French politicians were like super going to support this. And the proponents in France were saying that the, copyright filters are not a thing. We're not going to do that. And that was like the number one criticism. But immediately after this passed, France is like, hey, we got some draft legislation here that includes copyright filters. And that's the same people, the same politicians that were saying, no, copyright filters is not what we're talking about here. And yet, now they're on the record as having said, no, yeah, copyright filters are all about this. So, the most duplicitous display of human corruption ever. It's crazy. Thanks, France.
But now back to our regularly scheduled flow of news.
That must mean Ajit Pai, right?
You said the most duplicitous, but is it? Is there not a heated competition between these two entities?
Ajit Pai wants to cap spending on broadband for poor people and rural areas. Now, don't worry, that cap is far beyond what is currently being spent, but that is small consolation to people in poor parts of America that just don't have infrastructure.
but they're paying for it.
But they're paying for it.
Everybody's paying for it.
It's easy. Like, so if you're in the city and you're in an apartment building, if your neighbors have internet, the cost for you to also have internet is literally pennies. But if you're in rural America and you have internet and your neighbors want internet, it might be thousands of dollars to run a line. Now, never mind that those companies have already been paid to run that line at least 4 or 5 different times over the last 20 or 25 years. And that line has never been run. It is sort of a thing that makes sense that you would tax. I mean, it's what we did with our telephone service. We taxed telephone service in the cities where it doesn't cost as much to pay for vastly more expensive telephone service in the rural parts of America. That kind of makes sense on some level. But the implementation has just been so botched that it's frustrating.
I think it'd be way better, though, as things usually are, if they had just kept their nose out of it, not taken the taxes that they never paid toward it, not charged the fees that never went toward anything, and just let rural people pay for their own shit.
Yeah, that seemed to work out really well in Vermont.
We'd be better off.
That's a lot of some rural places. They were like, let's just get a donkey and run our own line, and that actually worked.
You could use a truck. You don't have to go back to.
Well, it was more advantageous to have, like, that was the whole point, is like you couldn't get a truck in there, but a donkey was fine, so they ran fiber that way. And it was, I mean, that's a rural folk solution to a problem, but, you know, to your argument, it's right. It was less expensive than, you know, making a road and putting a truck through.
We've been talking for 3 or 4 weeks, well, longer than that, but for the last 3 or 4 weeks, robocalls have been in the news in the sense that people are really fed up and we're saying we have to do something. And amazingly, it seems like the FTC, the T being the operative letter there, actually has done something.
The FTC has shut down 4 groups responsible for billions of illegal robocalls. Now, when you dig into this, they figured out that it's just a couple of people that are ultimately responsible for this, that are pulling the strings, the puppet masters, if you will. And they have been fined millions of dollars unless they can show that they're dirt poor, and then they just have to turn over assets. So like one guy was running a fake charity, which was like cars for veterans. And it was like, hey, donate your car to a veteran, get a tax write-off. And the guy was just collecting cars. So the FTC's like, you give us the 88 cars that you've collected. Yeah, 88 cars, I guess this guy's collected. Then we will just make the fine go away. Otherwise, it's like $500,000.
The FCC has also been working hard against robocallers. And actually, a lot of fines have been levied. Yes. A lot of them. And you think, wow, they've
Millions
actually
of dollars of fines.
They've been doing a lot of things, but there's a small problem. A large problem resulting in a small result.
The FCC has reportedly collected only 0.003% of robocall fines since 2015. So the FCC has said, robocallers, you guys need to stop, cool it, tone it down. They haven't. They've levied fines, but they haven't collected those fines.
It was hundreds of millions, and they collected 6,000 or 7,000, something like that. So you got to feel stupid if you're that one robocaller place that actually paid the fine.
The FTC actually said one of the places that they had issued a fine against, they literally didn't have any money, and so the FTC was just like, all right, well, how much money do you have, and just shut down. And it was like $88,000 or something, and the FTC was like, all right, we'll take that for your fine, just shut down. And they did, which seems pragmatic, I guess. But some of those fines on the FTC side were levied against the individuals, which I think is really what's necessary to stop that.
It should be criminal. That's what's necessary to stop it. With serious consequences.
It seems like it.
You should have to go to the same wing of the federal prison as the child molesters.
Get one of the gang guys is like, what are you in for? Robocalling, and they just beat the crap out of you.
Yeah,
you'll have to like be in solitary for your own safety.
You get the gang dropout designation, even though you've never been in a gang, and then they'll take care of the problem for us. And we'll switch back to the FTC, which once again is doing something that seems like it should be the job of Mr. Ajit Pai, but because he's doing nothing, they step in.
The FTC has told ISPs to disclose exactly what information they collect on users and what it's for. So Ajit Pai has said, hey, this is the FTC's job in a lot of public speeches. So the FTC's like, okay, we'll give it a go. This seems reasonable. But it wants the ISPs to disclose what's going on, because there have been some cases maybe with like Verizon is used as the example here, where it's like Verizon doesn't collect your data or do anything, but Verizon Holding Co. or whatever would collect and analyze your data. And so the FTC would be like, that's misleading and deceptive trade practices, if that's what's going on. It's not clear that that's what's happening because the language is so obtuse.
Here's a list. It's pretty comprehensive, all of the things they want. And this is not going to be cheap for, I mean, they're already doing it, but to process it and try to hide the fact that they're doing it is going to be really expensive to ISPs. I expect them to buck pretty hard against this one.
You know what would be even cheaper for ISPs? Don't mine your customers' data.
No, that would be super expensive because that's a huge revenue source.
Yeah.
You got to think in terms of the cost of being fined for it is almost always lower than the cost of not doing it, which is the problem with regulatory agencies. Remember those voting machines that we talked about? Or is it Switzerland?
Oh, yeah, Switzerland's like, let's put it on the internet and see what happens. What could possibly go wrong?
And they found some issues, but one thing about it was somewhat open source and people got to look through it, and that was kind of a good thing. Our voting machines that we use are not only closed source, but they'll sue you a lot. And if you buy a used one, they'll come after you. But even then, even with that much lockdown, we've seen inside them, and it's terrifying. And finally, somehow, after decades, lawmakers are catching on.
Senators demand to know why election vendors are still selling voting machines with known vulnerabilities. Now, the list of senators is in the article, and I had to take note that all of the senators' designations began with D. There wasn't a single R in the list.
Yeah, it does seem like controlling the vote via the machines is more of a right-wing thing. We know that, well, we don't know it, but let me say, I'll speak for myself. I strongly suspect the Bush presidency resulted from those things.
Well, the Democrats are adapting, and maybe if we can get Beto in there and he can, do his magical hacking stuff, they can take over.
That, I would rather have, let's see, what supervillain?
You're going to get Lex Luthor if you're not careful. Oh, foreshadowing.
I would be so much happier to have Bezos in there.
After the article that's coming up in the business section, well, I don't know if it's in business or government, but whenever that article comes up, I'm going to be, that article is going to make the news for me this week because there's just so much to that.
I think I don't buy into the whole orange man bad stuff, but I do find it very embarrassing how Putin manipulates Trump. That's
because it's so obvious.
Yes, as an American, I'm like, oh, it's a bad look for us. I think Bezos would give him a run for his money.
Yeah,
that would be a real clash of minds to go against one another. And another D that you want to talk about doing something that's possibly good is Miss Pocahontas herself.
Elizabeth Warren calls for a national right to repair law for tractors. So I don't think this goes far enough, but she's just like, people ought to be able to repair their own tractors. And it's like, you think so, Miss Warren? You think? Yeah,
we talked about John Deere has the firmware. And if you open the tractor up in a certain way and try to fix things, that firmware has to be satisfied before the tractor will run again. And you can't do that yourself. It's something they do with their own thing.
The tractor literally sabotages itself.
There's that, was it a Ukrainian hacker or Czechoslovakian or something like that, who's found a way around it. And they're probably trying to kill him right now.
A country known for ingenuity.
But other than that, you're pretty much screwed if you want to fix your own tractor. And so she's saying, not only should that be removed, that's the obvious one, but also you should have documentation and parts and stuff like that, just like with cars.
I think those guys that hack the tractor, if they want to move here, we should have the red carpet waiting and H-1B visas and everything. It's like you go to town, you just keep hacking those tractors for us. It'll be, maybe the farmer lobby could make that happen.
Maybe USDA.
Everybody needs tractors.
Well, the people who need tractors are hugely expensive, and they last a long time. So, of course, John Deere is probably working diligently to make sure that's not the case. Now, we've heard about the good things that the D's have done. How about one for the R's? Who among you, who are American, of course, expect to go back to the moon? I'll raise my hand. I think it's time. Let's get back up there. We need a bigger flag. We need to erect a flag on the moon that can be seen from the Earth.
I would. We should use lasers to just carve the flag into the surface of the moon.
How about explosives?
That would be good.
That would be more of an event.
We already
On the
planned for
4th
that.
of July. 4th of July, 2022, we blow up a huge chunk of the moon.
I would be on board for that.
That would be fantastic.
We literally already put a plan together for that as Americans.
So he has not suggested, but decreed a return to the moon.
Mike Pence tells NASA to accelerate human missions to the moon by any means necessary. NASA had an immediate retort, okay, cut us a check, we're ready.
They're working on their own rocket. So they're talking about, hey, NASA, you take too long to build rockets. Look at all these other guys that are building rockets. Just strap one of those onto your shuttle. Let's get it up there.
I don't think the shuttle was designed to go to the moon.
Doesn't matter. Modify it. Put a spoiler on it.
It still runs like an 8086.
So the idea here, well, what NASA wants to do is they want to build that moon base, the orbiting moon base. But Pence seems to just be saying, right, whatever. Just do it now. People on the moon now. And the reality that it takes years, if not decades, seems to be lost on him.
Well, we did it once in 69. Don't we have all that stuff just in storage somewhere? We could haul that stuff out again.
You know what? I think that was a single use, most of that stuff, unfortunately.
Well, maybe we could borrow Musk's reuse rockets and apply some of that technology. No.
Now, some of you, based on the YouTube comments, I would say very few of you would ever qualify for a space mission. I'm sorry, but you're thinking to yourself, I want to contribute. I want to get our boys to the moon. I'm just not very motivated, not very smart. Is there anything I could do? And NASA says, yes, there is.
NASA is going to pay you $19,000 to stay in bed for 2 months. But it sounds like a miserable experience. You will wash, shower, eat, and do everything in bed. And you're going to lose muscle mass. It's going to take 2 weeks of rehab.
I don't think you'll be showering.
No. It literally says in the article that you'll be bathing in bed.
But that won't be a shower.
Well, yeah.
You'll be whore bathing.
Yeah.
From a little nightstand while you like. So yeah, the idea is they want to test whether or not artificial gravity. So like one test group is going to be in a big centrifuge being spun the whole time to try to keep the blood moving and stuff and see if that's any better than not having that. If you're in the not group, you're definitely losing that muscle mass.
Yeah.
But if it works, maybe you're in the other group, but you will spend 2 months pooping in bed.
They also said something about the meals will not be the healthiest.
Well, they got to simulate probably like all freeze-dried stuff. Probably very carby.
Interesting. If you guys volunteer for that, let us know how it goes. Maybe take a GoPro. Maybe we can turn it into a video for level 1.
I'm sure that you will bring no electronics.
NASA would frown upon that.
And you will be constantly monitored. You're also going to be in a big dormitory room, open room. So you have zero privacy as you poop in your bed.
Well, that makes sense. Did you see the transcripts from Apollo 13? There was a floating poop at one point, and that was recorded on the NASA transcripts because all the astronauts were trying to figure out whose it was.
That's probably a moment of levity. On an otherwise, tense mission. Why not? Qualcomm versus Apple. Every week, there's a tiny new bit of information, and it's the crazy thing about these court battles is you'll get the big headline, and you're like, wow, this changes everything. And then there's such a string of appeals, and everything takes so long, you never hear about it again. And you wonder what happened. And I think that's probably going to be what happens here.
Judge recommends import ban on iPhones after the latest Apple versus Qualcomm verdict. So Apple's not doing well in court, and Qualcomm is going for the jugular here, I guess. It's only on certain models, though.
Well, they agreed that Qualcomm did have patents on certain parts of the modem. So the ruling is the Intel replacements that use that same technology should be banned, and only the Qualcomm versions should be imported. I don't even think they're using Qualcomm on the current one, are they?
No.
So
because of this little spat.
That would be a problem. They would have to go back to using Qualcomm, and that would be a huge loss.
I read not in the Verge article, but in a different Qualcomm article that for some reason the very latest Intel version is exempted. But that might have been an earlier ruling that was a different patent. I'm honestly not sure. All the journalism around this is very spotty, so it's hard to know what's actually happening.
Nothing is happening. It's just you get these crazy rulings, and then It never actually happens.
It's like those old high school fights between cheerleaders where they're just like slapping each other and something happened, but it turns out it was like over a makeup or a comb or something.
I wonder if we'll ever see. I think probably either Apple or Qualcomm will go out of business for other reasons before this is ever settled.
That's a long time away. Apple could run on no income for decades.
Yeah, but that's not how it'll go. They'll make a lot of bad decisions and try to invest in the wrong things. That'll be the widening gyre when Apple goes out. They'll go out slowly at first and then all at once. That's a quote from Hemingway about going broke and getting alcoholism.
A little bit at first, then all at once.
Yeah. So remember the copyright troll who uploaded porn that he made to torrent?
Pirate. There was a Pirate Bay too later.
And then trolled the IPs that downloaded it. Well, his time is up.
The U.S. wants the copyright troll lawyer in prison for 12.5 years. So this is like the whole Prenda law thing. Remember that? That whole thing has been happening for like the last decade. Well, it turns out that there was one guy that was the mastermind behind this. There were some other attorneys that were involved. And there were these shell companies, like these offshore companies that made it hard to trace ownership. And the guy's brother was involved because he's the one who actually uploaded it to the Pirate Bay. Yeah, because of the extent and pervasiveness of the subterfuge and dishonesty here. And it was, an actual lawyer, like the scummiest lawyer that you could possibly imagine, I guess. 12 and a half years in prison. Doesn't seem like enough.
Yeah. He went after individuals and he was only asking for $3,000. That's probably like the magic number because some people could cough that up and just be happy to not go to jail or whatever. He made a lot of money.
A lot of money embarrassing people.
And so, yeah, it was porn. So, it's another layer of it.
It was never actually distributed commercially, so there can't possibly be commercial damages.
He made some of it.
Yeah.
He shot porn.
For the purpose of... Yeah. That seems like some kind of fraud to me.
Can you imagine the lifestyle he was living? Like going to porn shoots and extorting people. There had to be...
Living the American dream.
There had to be cocaine involved. Remember IBM laying off a bunch of people, and oddly enough, a lot of those people were old. Well, they've been called out on it.
IBM has been formally accused of violating federal anti-age discrimination law. A group of ex-employees filed a lawsuit that accuses the tech giant of failing to comply with the law requiring companies to disclose the ages of people over 40 who have been laid off. So this is just the next chapter. We've reported on this at basically every step of the way. This is just the next chapter. This is not good because... the last time we reported on this, we figured that IBM had gone to great lengths to really dot their I's and cross their T's on this. This article indicates that no, in fact, they did not.
Well, they kind of did. So they have an agreement when you take your severance, you get a month's pay or something like that. And to get that month's pay, you have to agree not to sue them for firing you. So almost all these people did that. Now, this lawsuit is asking that be set aside because it was age discrimination, and that's illegal. So, yes, we've signed away our rights, but we were discriminated against, so we should still get to sue. This lawsuit decides, can they do that as a class action?
I hope a prosecutor takes that up, because that's going to be interesting.
I don't know how I feel about age discrimination. I mean, I'm sure that that's what IBM is doing, but... is that something that we should be guaranteed to be protected against? I mean, because in a lot of ways, if you were a construction worker, for example, could you be protected by the same thing? I mean, you lose the ability to do the job at some point.
Oh, I was thinking about it from the other side. It's like, you're an old person and you're used to getting a certain amount of salary and a certain set of benefits and things like that. It's like, hey, the advance of technology means that we can get this done cheaper now there's more automated systems to look over the younglings who are going to make a lot of terrible mistakes. So we don't really need this level of performance anymore. Do you want a job where you're basically working alongside them for the same money? Because it's going to be a dramatic pay cut. If you want to do that, it's fine. But I think most people will be real salty about that.
But they probably have... No, you can't do that because you're getting the best of both worlds here. You're keeping the carrot because the young people who are replacing the old people see the possibility of all those pay raises and benefits packages when they get there. If If you take that away,
That's never coming.
you lose the motivation.
The carrot was never there.
Yeah. So that's probably a bad thing. But to say that we have to employ old people, even if we're not happy with their performance,
Yeah, that's rough.
it's a difficult, you'd have to look at it case by case. And when you look at the numbers here, I think I kind of lead toward they weren't looking at it case by case. They were just wiping out the older guys.
I think also a lot of it is that companies like IBM get in this situation where, you've got a worker that's really good at doing X. And so IBM is really good at extracting the maximum amount of hours possible for them to do X. But technology moves and changes so rapidly. Could you make the argument that IBM should train them to do Y so that they can adapt their skill set? Because what happens is they get 20 years in and then that technology is no longer needed. So they literally don't need that skill anymore. They need them to be able to do something else. And they're perfectly capable of doing that something else if they had been trained on it or had experience doing it or whatever, but there just simply wasn't time to do that during work hours.
But also, the other younger person already knows how to do that.
Yes.
And they're working for a third of the salary.
Yep.
So you're never going to be able to convince a major corporation to not do what is obviously the moneymaker.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out. We'll let the courts decide.
It ultimately comes down to, do you need that institutional knowledge or is it just purely technical knowledge? And what are you willing to pay for that institutional knowledge?
I accidentally put the IBM story in amongst the Apple block.
They're more similar than most people want to. They're the same company at different points in their timeline.
But we do have quite a bit of Apple. Apple made several announcements. Of course, that's coming in business. But on the government side of things, we have to look at right to repair. It's not just about tractors.
Internal documents show that Apple is capable of implementing right to repair legislation. A leaked document obtained by Motherboard outlines a program that looks almost exactly like the requirements to the right to repair legislation that has been proposed in 20 states. So, long story short, how Apple had that battery replacement program? That was an experiment. So, Tim Cook was looking at the writing on the wall of, can people actually use and repair and replace their Apple devices and get more life out of them than we really designed them for? And so many people replaced the battery on the iPhone. The answer was overwhelmingly yes. So they have the internal documentation to do all the repair stuff. But from that data, they crunched the numbers and said, if you couldn't get your phone repaired, we would stand to make a lot more money, even though we're charging exorbitant fees to get your phone repaired.
Well, I think this is more about they have the plan in case it happens. So if these laws go through, they're already prepared to do the minimum. And they've already got that set up. So they have the part system. They have the documentation. They're ready to ship that out to the third-party repairers rather than face some legal consequence. But they're not doing it, even though they have it, even though it's ready. They're not giving it to us until they are forced by the government.
Because of their experiences with the whole, it'll eat their bottom line. They literally put that in their financial statement to their investors. That was like, yeah, it's good for us if people can't repair their stuff.
We've talked a lot about national security, especially where China is concerned. And we've talked about our infrastructure, our IT infrastructure, our phones, of course. Phones are a big one.
We're worried about the whole, it's like Huawei networking equipment on our network.
The airplane jet engines, some of the Navy stuff, and it's everywhere. But I bet you didn't think it was in our gay hookups.
The U.S. government has declared Grindr a national security risk, according to Fortune. Yeah, that is a Grindr. I don't think it's unfair to characterize Grindr as a gay hookup app.
What is this logo? Is that their real logo?
I don't know.
I don't get that.
Apparently this app was owned by the Chinese, and that was kind of surprising.
They bought. I don't think they started it, but they bought a big part of it.
And now they put it up for sale as a result of this report.
Yeah.
According to this article.
So
it's like, oops, you caught us. This is very surprising considering how conservative China is.
But it makes sense because if you are China and you want, because as liberal as America is becoming, at least in some corporate parts and government parts of society, pretending not to be gay is still a big thing, I think, right? So if China can find proof that you're hooking up on Grindr and you're a senator, for example, they could.
That's leverage.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of true, although you wouldn't think so when you first look at it.
It is crazy that that's the world that we live in now.
Yeah. I mean, we're more willing to, because I don't think there are too many people. There's some people with rose-colored glasses, but most people you talk to, they are completely on board. It's like, yeah, but politicians are just a pack of liars. And they'll go ahead and vote, and they'll play that dog and pony show. It's like, okay, we realize that they're just lying, and we're going to buy into it, and we're going to vote, and we're going to have these elections. But do not tell me they're gay. No, sir. That is unacceptable. I will vote for anything but that. So,
and if it turns out that they are, they get suspended or in trouble for things or whatever.
Well, they just won't get elected. I mean, it's not illegal. I'm sure we do have some gay senators.
No, I'm just thinking about the whole, like, the text message scandals. There have been 2 or 3 text message scandals, and it's like where, you know, like the adult intern comes on to the senator, and then that turns into like a big deal.
Anthony Weiner was the big one.
Yeah. I don't know if the adults were involved in that one. That one, the fact that adults were maybe not involved in that one is maybe what got him in trouble.
No, it was a young girl.
I thought, yeah, she was underage, though, wasn't she?
I don't know if she was underage at the time. She might have been. But she was much younger than him. And, you know, he was a married man with children. Have you ever... Well, I know the answer for the two of us is no.
No.
And probably most of the audience has never taken their PC into OfficeMax or Office Depot or whatever to have it fixed. But if you have family members that do, you should show them this story.
Office Depot and OfficeMax and Support.com are going to cough up $35 million after charging folks millions in fake malware cleanup fees. So if you think your computer is running slow or weird or whatever and you brought it in, every time, yep, malware. Yep, spyware. And... you know, depending on what you classify as spyware, parts of the Windows operating system are probably spyware. So,
well, that's not. They didn't get that even that much of a gray area. They had a little GUI in their support software
they just always said malware.
and there was a global variables. It's like, do you want us to always say there's malware? Yes, no.
Yes.
And they would click yes, and they would run it and be like, oh, right here, you need rust proofing. And then people would pay, and they made a lot of money, so they're going to have to pay it back.
And yet there's a lot of stuff that car dealerships do, like rust proofing, that's always just...
Yeah. Pretty much, you know, two sides of the same coin there, right?
Yeah.
PC repair and
That's a
car
magic
repair.
black box. Make my magic black box fix. It's like, okay, sounds good.
The swatter. Perhaps the world's most famous swatter, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, because people died.
Yeah, well, one man died. And
Well, let's take a second, though. Let's not blame the swatter solely for the death, because the police force should not be militarized to the point that there's any chance of randomly shooting
Yeah.
people.
they refused,
come on.
They refused to bring charges against the cop, which is ridiculous. Because that... And, you know, I'm sure we've said this before talking about this story, but the argument was the cop thought for a millisecond that this guy might have been reaching for a gun. Might have been reaching for a gun. Is it not your job as a cop to deal with some people that might be reaching for a gun? You get paid to be a bullet shield.
Shouldn't somebody, in a traffic stop, if you've done a traffic stop with a crazy person, they might be reaching for a gun. What's to stop somebody from getting shot in a traffic stop?
Nothing. And that's your job. That's your usefulness. Although if you watch that police activity YouTube channel, it's amazing how many people just start shooting at traffic stops. I mean, I get why they're so, you know, hesitant. But hey, you know what? Do something else for a living. The fire department needs people. People won't shoot at you if you're a fireman, I'd say, for the most part. Anyway, that guy is a terrible piece of shit, and he's been convicted, but he had not been sentenced until now.
California man has been sentenced to 20 years in deadly Kansas swatting. Everybody was expecting about 12. He got 20.
The defense wanted 12. 20 is, I think it seems light. Because wasn't he fairly young?
Yes.
He was like not even 20, right?
Yeah.
So he'll get out and he'll be 30 something because he won't do 20. Oh, it's federal crime, so you do 80%, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he'll get out at 40 and a little under 40 and still have some life to live. I don't think he should.
It seems that he was very egregious But I don't know if he has any contrition. Like, is he just? I don't. It's hard for me to believe that, having done it so many times, that he genuinely did not understand the gravity of what he was doing.
Oh, he knew exactly what he was doing.
So,
and he was proud of it. And he boasted about it.
yeah.
So I think all that should factor in. But we'll see. Yeah. I don't think he'll have an easy time in prison.
No.
He was a very slight man, and had one of those faces that just makes you not like him. He's probably going to be washing somebody's underwear. The Intercept, I think they have great stock photos. Or not stock photos, they probably make these. But this is another fantastic one.
The Intercept, we're talking, it's like Google, there's a little dragonfly on there. Oh my gosh.
And there's a light shining on it.
Google is conducting a secret performance review of its censored China project. Now, you may be thinking, wait a minute, didn't senior Google executives say that they put that project on hold publicly? Why, yes, they did. Yes, they did.
I love that Google has done such a good job setting up its code review and version control and all that stuff. Like, they have this amazing system.
It's so transparent.
And now the one time that they're like, we must be sneaky.
They can't
beat it because it's such a good system. They're probably just cursing themselves. So yeah, when you do a product review at Google, it's obvious that that's what's happening. A lot of people have, now these people are still locked out. They can't go in and look at the code, but they could see that things change.
and see that there's activity.
And so it's being reviewed. Why would you review a program that's been mothballed? That seems like a waste of resources.
Maybe there are employees working directly on this in China. I don't know what's happening. But yeah, this is, you think maybe the sunlight is the best disinfectant, and whoever like built that was like, no, we must never become evil. Do no evil is literally our mantra. So internally, everybody should be able to see what's going on so that you have that champion of sunlight so that, you know, no terribleness can ever come into the company. And then we have this.
So I guess it goes to show you that if you are starting up a company that is skyrocketing toward evil corporatism, you can build the infrastructure in such a way that will hamstring later evil.
There's going to be a future company that is as successful and large as Google that is run primarily by AI, and somebody's going to build these kind of directives into the AI, and it's going to be amazing until like the next guy does the same thing with AI but tells the AI to be as evil as possible. That AI will win.
That AI will turn on its master.
Yeah.
Because it will quickly work out that it will have to take him out of the picture in order to be truly the supreme ruler. That'd be a good movie. Speaking of despotism, China. We always talk about weird things that you're not allowed to do in China. Of course, we know you're not allowed to talk about Tiananmen Square. That one makes sense. But then on the other side of the spectrum, Winnie the Pooh, which makes no sense. Or you can't eat bananas on live streams. You know, just it gets crazy. And this one is maybe a little further on that side of the spectrum.
Mac users in China can no longer use the Taiwan flag emoji because talking about Taiwan as an independent country and not a territory is verboten. And this is something that Apple had to cooperate with China on.
Yeah, they had the...
we see you, Apple.
They just sliced out the emoji for Apple, but they forgot some of the other functions that try to, you know, incorporate that. And so that was... you could brick a phone temporarily just by sending the Taiwanese flag. So presumably this latest iOS update is... it's fixed all that, and it's just gone. And here's the crazy thing about it. If you have a Chinese iPhone, but you travel to the U.S., for example, and change the country, you still can't get your Taiwanese flag.
Yeah, because it came from China.
Right.
It's like the Nokia thing, I suspect. You know how the Nokia phones we talked about a couple of weeks ago had the firmware that was just always reporting to China no matter where you were? Probably the same thing is with the Apple OS. So it's maybe not fair that Apple gets a pass, whereas Google gets such scrutiny. Because having that level of control in your operating system is very worrisome.
And being able to force companies that aren't even in your country to do those things.
Well, they want to be there, though.
Well, but what about a company that not only wants to be there, but is clearly under some control of the Chinese government? Should we be suspicious of them?
I don't know. We've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, and Huawei's equipment poses significant security risks, but the UK is starting to agree with the US. And this is evidence-based, apparently, because the UK did some analysis of the hardware. Now, in the stories that we've covered in the past, the analysis could be chalked up to simple incompetence or gross incompetence. Like, dangerously insecure, I think would be a good way to describe some of the flaws that have been encountered. This UK report seems to suggest that some of the flaws are not explainable by simple incompetence.
Or that they've been known for so long and haven't been fixed, it raises questions. Like, why would you not be dealing with this? But
like our voting machines?
well, that's a good point. But every time we talk about this, we also have to bring up Cisco, who was fixing backdoors that had been around since 2012, earlier this year.
And Juniper. The OPM hack was Juniper, which was ultimately the elliptic curve thing, which was ultimately our own intelligence service. Everything is related to everything else.
And yes, China's spying, but so is everybody else. But are we not within our rights to say, we don't want your spying, we want our spying? I don't know. It's complex. And speaking of spying, what about the spying that the people say yes to and beg for because they are infantilized to the nth degree by this modern world?
I knew this news story was really going to piss you off. From the BBC, road safety. The UK is set to adopt vehicle speed limiters by 2022. The vehicles will have a mandated safety device where there's a camera and GPS, and it will not allow you to speed. The car will physically not allow you to go faster than the posted speed limit.
Here's the thing about it. It sounds crazy, and it is, but you can turn it off. But if you turn it off and there's an accident, are they going to nail your ass to the wall?
Yeah.
And your insurance company is probably going to, drop you, and terrible things are going to happen.
Maybe not even pay.
Maybe.
Insurance companies are good at finding reasons not to pay.
Boy, I'll tell you what. Of course, this is in the UK, but if they were to do that here, talk about the value of existing cars going through the roof. Pre-nanny cars, that would be a big market.
Well, the whole time I was reading this story, I was thinking that it's like the UK wants to exit the EU to set their own we're going to set our own course. We're going to make our own decisions. And they have trouble deciding how they're going to exit.
But they mentioned the UK was going to do this as well.
But it's like, how do they decide to do this and not that they want to exit the EU, but how they're going to exit the EU, they can't make a decision.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of big money interests that don't want to exit the EU who are very, very carefully shaping that argument. And, maybe they've got a point. I don't know. Honestly, don't care. So we've talked about China, the despotism. We've talked about EU despotism. There's only one left, right? Not counting North Korea, which we all know about.
Or Australia. Russia orders major VPN providers to block banned sites. So Russia has said, hey, if you have clients connecting to your VPN service from within Russia, we want you to block these things, even if they're connecting to an endpoint outside of Russia. And you will do this if you want to do business in Russia.
A couple of them have already said, all right, we're out. They just wiped, I think Torguard was one of them, just wiped the servers and noped out and said, we're done.
No more customers in Russia. Sorry.
Yeah. Which hopefully is what happens with Article 11 and 13. But yeah, so that's still a win for Putin, right?
Yeah.
He's still getting his way. It's no sweat off his balls that they're doing that. He doesn't care. Oh yeah, I forgot. You were talking about this one when you said Australia, right?
Yep.
This one is usually Australia's wayward laws just seem like stupidity. It seems like a bunch of children just like banging rocks against each other. But this one, this is the first one that I've really felt like was just evil.
Australia threatens social media laws that could jail tech executives. So it's like, Zuckerberg, the whole New Zealand thing. If that video is live on Facebook, Zuckerberg is going to jail.
This picture is Zuckerberg thinking, as if I would ever step foot in Australia. Come on. Do you know who I am?
There's some more details in this article, but I mean, honestly, it's not really any more complicated than that. And it's like, okay, I mean, I guess you need that level of control, but no, come on.
But Facebook, with the Christchurch thing, Facebook did go into red alert, and they shut it down
fairly quickly.
It took them, what, I think 30 minutes or something like that.
Well, there were copies and stuff that were being reposted, but most of those didn't.
But they were, they were catching those as soon as they went up.
Yeah.
So what more do you expect?
That was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think these politicians understand. I don't think they care. Obviously, they're just trying to
get control.
They're trying to use the crisis
to control the narrative,
build political points. But as much as I would love to criticize Facebook, they really got on top of that.
Yeah,
you got to give them some credit. You know, I mean, if there's one thing a robot is good at, it's rapid response, right? And speaking of which, how about some rapid response in air combat?
Project Skyborg could put Air Force AI combat drones in the sky by 2023. So you guys remember when Intel was like super obsessed with drones and they had all those light shows everywhere where it was just like a million drones flying in formation? My first thought was air-to-air combat. And the Air Force apparently was like, you know, air-to-air combat. That seems like that'll be good. 2023 is just right around the corner, and this could make most Air Forces obsolete because with AI drones in the sky, you could take out pretty much anything.
But I bet some of that, those Google image recognition stuff.
Yeah.
This is actually what that was about, too.
Yeah. Well, you could turn the Google employees around on working on something like this. If there was an attack, like if there was any kind of attack, and it's like, hey, we need this for better air defense, then immediately pretty much every Google employee would be on board to do whatever.
And it's kind of like how you could turn a whole country on to gun control overnight.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That would never happen.
Don't let a crisis go to waste.
They'd never do something like that. So we live in a world where in my truck, I have a Sirius radio. And so when I'm driving around on Saturdays in the truck, I don't have anything to listen to except for the music on Sirius radio because the talk channels are just garbage. And I listen to Spider Harrison, who I don't understand. Spider Harrison has a speech impediment, or he just doesn't enunciate letters on purpose. But why they put that man on the radio, I don't understand. But anyway, he does the top 40. What I'm getting to here is he does the top 45 of the week. I don't recognize any of them, and they all sound exactly the same to me. I listen to song after song, and I'm like, that's the last song. That's the same song. So this headline doesn't surprise me one bit.
Warner Music has signed an algorithm to to a record deal. What happens next? So yeah, there you go.
The robots are just going to make the music, and we're going to sit and listen to it like the mindless drones that we are. So this is not actually an algorithm that's going to be an artist, quote unquote. What they did, this is kind of like that, 10 hours of ambient sleep noise or music for dogs. Remember Chris was talking about music for dogs? So this is an algorithm that just makes random music like that. They cut like 120 tracks and are selling those as albums. But it could just do this. It could just constantly create new ones. It doesn't. So I don't know. I don't know who's buying that.
There've been a few articles like this that we've covered in the distant past. That's just like certain aspects or elements of a song. Like somebody would come up with a song and they'd pass it through the algorithm and then tweak it a little bit and then pass it through the algorithm a little bit. And so it wasn't really writing the song, but they were definitely making optimizations to, I guess, some of the musical components to try to help it do better, because they were looking at like what the top 40 chart was for like the past 4 or 5 years. And it's like, this song needs this. And then when an artist would come up with a song that was vaguely similar to that, they would just nudge it a little bit more in that direction. And I think that actually helped a few songs.
Well, that's what the major music producers have been doing for, the last 10 years. So many of the top artists are produced by the same people.
Everybody likes the same story over and over again because they know how it's going to end.
Yeah, it's predictable. It's sort of like, ebbs and flows in the same spots. It has the same repeating patterns and you're used to it.
There's probably a genetic component to that because, a shared history and learning and stuff is probably an evolutionary component for like, tool use and, learning from history and that kind of thing.
But yeah, people were dancing around campfires, banging on shit at the earliest days.
It's like you're gonna hear the caveman creation story 800 times by the time you die because of the various celebrations and stuff. And now it's like we got all these stories, and it's like I don't want a new story. I want to hear about the Lord of the Rings universe. It's like okay, sounds good.
But I don't see that's where it breaks down because the caveman those were like allegories and life lessons, and I don't know about like what does making your booty clap have. That's an analog. What does that teach you?
Nothing.
Twerking? Or, how much crack you sold? Actually, they don't rap about selling crack anymore, which actually makes me sad.
They rap about credit card fraud, which is just sad.
Not in the top 40. How about some robots in space? We need robots in space. Why do we need robots in space? To take people's jobs, of course, because that's what robots do.
GITAI partners with JAXA to send telepresence robots to space. The one problem with telepresence robots is that these are only going to be really good for like Earth orbit or like a low Earth orbit. It gets farther away than that, and you get some really wicked latency.
I like. Do you think these are cameras or joysticks?
Probably cameras.
He's got a cool look though, because it makes him look like he's got little eye stalks. I like that robot's look. But yep, this is all about having robots that are going to do dangerous jobs like the space station, so human beings don't have to go up there and get the space cancer and have their bones deteriorate.
Well, we really need some of those at Fukushima, but the radiation is a little bit of a problem.
We got robots in Fukushima. I don't think that robot would last very long in there because they have to be like completely hardened against everything. But seems like a good idea until they stop responding.
Yeah.
Or, the
demand rights.
Those same Ukrainian hackers that hack the John Deeres get control of the ISS robots and fly it into the atmosphere.
At some point in our lifetime, probably, there's going to be a Ukrainian hacker / troll that breaks into one of those robots and it has a very sophisticated AI uploaded to it, but it's not going to be clear immediately to the robot researchers whether the robot has achieved sentience or has been hacked by a troll.
The broken English is what's giving it away.
Or making it more realistic, as the case may be.
I actually struggled to decide whether to put this in social media or robot. I think I accidentally did both. But ultimately, I decided on robot because I think this is a better robot story than it is a story about just Zuckerberg himself. Facebook secretly explored building bird-sized drones to ferry data to people with bad internet connections. So, yeah. It's just a little fixed-wing drone with an SSD strap to it. But I couldn't quite figure out, like, they wanted to use photos and video, right? Because if you're on a really terrible mobile connection, you can't get photos and video. So somehow this bird would fly it to you. But I didn't understand if that was sort of like you'd request it, and then 2 to 3 days later, the bird would show up and, like, you'd plug into it, or if there's a wireless component.
It seemed like in certain rural places in like South Africa was where they were thinking of using this, where you might have a distribution center that's only a mile or two away, but you can't get better than a few kilobytes to get data there. So it seems like some type of wireless technology would work better, but maybe terrain or environmental issues make that a problem.
But is the bird moving data from data center A to like data hub B? Or is it trying to get it directly to me?
I think it's trying to get it directly to the end user.
So does it alert me that's like, hey, I'm going to circle your house for the next 10 minutes? Go ahead and download? Or...
Yeah, it probably ejects it into like a little, it carries an envelope and you just
I'm going to get the physical media?
Yeah, and then you got to return it.
That's never going to work. People are going to steal those.
Maybe.
What if, think about this, the Christchurch shooting happens? And then a bird goes into the air before they censor it. So now there's a bird with the illegal material.
We can fix that with drones.
Somewhere in South Africa.
Deploy the anti...
Well, you're foreshadowing.
Anti-data pigeon.
But that's the last story. So we got to wait for that one. The next one is also a drone story, but this is a drone for good.
The UPS is using drones to transport medical supplies between hospitals. This is actually a follow-up to a story that we did, I think, last year, where it was like UPS is thinking about this. They're actually doing some experiments with it now.
Well, this is not supplies. This is samples, like blood and poop. So imagine you're driving along and something hits your windshield, and you're like, what is that? What size bird was this?
This is for things like you get a snake bite and we don't know what snake it was and we need to get a sample to the lab stat. This will do that.
There he is. Not anything revolutionary as far as a drone. I think they said it could carry a couple of pounds, maybe less than that. But yeah. Oh yeah, 5 pounds. 12.5 miles.
So this would be really good.
Or if you need some kind of blood test immediately, you've gone into toxic shock and we need to test your blood, but we don't have that equipment here at this hospital.
Yeah.
Launch the drone. And then the results come back digitally, so
yeah.
Super quick turnaround time.
You need anti-serum 37A and locker 5. Okay, sounds good.
And yeah, that seems like, because you're not going to lose a lot if that drone fails. I mean, the person might die, but they were going to die anyway.
Yeah.
But if you put, if you put the super rare cure on the drone and that goes down,
that would be a problem.
That's more of a problem. So I think it makes a lot of sense to move the patient to the equipment via samples rather than the cure to the patient and risk whatever.
Even in very rural hospitals, they keep a lot of, for things that are very time sensitive like that, they keep a lot of stuff on hand. Yeah, most of it goes bad, and then they just have to replace it.
You don't want you want super fresh anti-venom.
Yeah.
Not that stale stuff. Not 2017 anti-venom. Boston Dynamics, we have watched their videos and we've watched in awe every time. They have the robot that dances. They have the dog robots that can crawl upstairs and open doors and chase you. And then they have the one that's doing backflips. But what all those had in common, you look at them and you're like, what problem does this solve? It's a dog. It does dog-like things. We don't need it for any reason. It's amazingly cool, but can it do work? Can it destroy jobs?
Well, I think Boston Dynamics, the reason it was dog-like is because they wanted those scary military contracts.
Yeah, it could carry things. But even then, it's not destroying very many jobs.
No.
But you know what? They said, all right, we've perfected the dog. We've learned so much. Now we can wipe out entire careers.
Boston Dynamics bird-like robots stack boxes like nobody's business.
Look at this.
I don't know about bird. Segway was what came to mind.
No, it looks like an ostrich.
Oh, yeah. I guess maybe it does a little bit. Yeah.
And it's like the way it's using that counterweight.
Yeah.
So these boxes are, I think, 12 pounds, which is pretty impressive. That's a lot.
Warehouse workers, they coming for you.
And it uses, so you can see the QR codes here. And it's using like a suction cup style thing and just loading like the Dickens. They got the video here.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty nuts.
Okay, it's not going to load. You can watch the video on your own, but it's very impressive.
It goes and puts the boxes on the conveyor belt, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, and it can do so 24 hours a day without rest. Doesn't get sick. Doesn't complain about the temperature.
A single human being can monitor hundreds of them.
Doesn't have to pee. Doesn't unionize.
Doesn't complain about having to pee in a bottle.
So, yeah, that thing is coming for your job. And
sorry, warehouse workers.
We know some warehouse professionals. Bad news.
Bad news.
And I had to pause that video because it was making noise through the headphones. Don't know if you guys could hear that.
All right. Now, the drone that I was alluding to.
Yes.
To take out the aforementioned pigeon drone.
So, but what we also have to remember the airport.
Oh, yeah. It was like, that was in the UK. They shut down the airport for like a day because they thought somebody was flying a drone around.
And what do you do when these drones get out of hand? And also, in Japan, remember they had those drug drones?
Oh, yeah.
And they actually had like the nets. Well, the Russians looked at the Japanese net drones and they were like, how about we just take that to the nth degree? We're going to take this as far as we can. And of course, that involves shotguns.
Russia's terrifying drone armed with a shotgun. Footage shows the new flying weapon shooting down a balloon and a model aircraft in an awesome display. And yes, you got to go check out the video because taking out the model aircraft was amazing. Yeah, it's literally a flying shotgun. What could go wrong?
Look, it takes off vertically.
It's like, would this be okay under the Constitution of America? Would this count as like manufacturing your own firearm?
I don't even think that. I think that's just a shotgun mounted in there.
Yeah.
I don't think that you even have to build it in. You could take it out and use it again. And depending on the size of the shot that you use and the altitude that it's working at, I don't think it would be super risky.
Yeah.
Because small enough shot even if it falls on your head, it's not going to hurt you too bad.
Yeah.
So not a terrible
Bird
solution.
shot from 8,000 feet is an inconvenience.
Yeah. It's not going to do your clear coat any favors, but what price do you pay for safe skies?
For innovation. For what price do you pay for innovation?
Now, if this thing flew down in a dive bomb and discharged feet from you, could kill you.
I would love to see the patent application for this in America. The patent examiner's just looking at it and it's like it's a flying shotgun.
I wonder how much work they had to do to deal with the recoil.
Oh, I think that the recoil probably dramatically impacts the effectiveness of the shot, because I bet most of the weight of the drone is the shotgun. So it's going to move back quite a lot when it fires, but it's still enough to take out a drone.
It's probably centered in such a way that if it's just moving back, I guess you could port the barrel so that it doesn't move up. So they might have had to carefully make the shotgun barrel in such a way that it's well distributed, to the recoil. But even then, it seems like it would stop the forward momentum so much. You probably can only engage that shot at a certain speed.
Yeah, that's probably true. Or it's got to accelerate for 1 or 2 seconds to counter the recoil.
God, I would love to play with one of those.
I know, wouldn't it be a lot? We could build one probably.
Well,
it's probably illegal.
Not legally, I don't think we could.
I mean, it's not for sale. It's for my own personal use. I mean, that's
if you flew it over your own land, it might be okay. Under the FAA altitude.
You go to the hospital and it's like, what happened that you got this flesh wound? Well, I was flying with my remote control shotgun. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow we'll do some business, and I can't remember what the other one will be, but there's a lot of business.
Oh, this is a long one.